Sacha Lord is a former Labour Party donor. He was also the nighttime economy advisor to Andy Burnham as Mayor of Greater Manchester. And he joins us to talk about all of this and more. A very good afternoon to you, Sacha.
Good afternoon, Julia.
Thank you very much indeed for joining us. Now, we got to know you, and my audience got to know you an awful lot on the show during lockdown, when you were one of the chief campaigners for trying to get this country back to normal life, to sanity, getting one of our major employers back up and running in terms of the hospitality industry. But you've always been, a loyal Labour man. You've given some of your own hard-earned money to the Labour Party, supporting Andy Burnham. We'll talk about him a little bit later as well. What did you make of the Keir Starmer keynote speech that's supposed to be about his premiership, his government, his leadership, with 161 majority, just less than 15 months into winning that landslide majority last year, spending half his time basically slagging off the Reform leader, Nigel Farage?
Yeah, it was embarrassing, wasn't it? So it's very clear to me that he knows come May the 6th, Labour are going to be completely wiped out in the local elections, completely wiped out in Scotland, completely wiped out in Wales. And that's his moment when he will have to stand down. I wanted him to stand there and say, look, we didn't get everything right in the last 14 months. I wanted him to explain why, since the last budget, in my industry, hospitality, there's been 110,000 job losses.
Wow.
Why pubs now selling a pint of beer are only making 12p profit after the massive tax that this government's put on them. And he had such a huge moment. I'll be honest, he had a little bit more passion, Julia, than he normally does.
Didn't he?
Perhaps he'd had a couple of coffees before he went on, because he's so cardboard. He's not the type of person you want to sit and have a conversation with, is he? And it was so scripted as well. To me, he's just not a leader. I went to the manifesto launch in Manchester, and the Chancellor stood there and told the room that she was the Chancellor of business, the Chancellor of growth. This is the same Chancellor that increased national insurance on us. And she has done nothing for my sector, the fifth biggest industry in the UK, the third largest employer. And in its current format, and that's important to say that in its current format, I am not supporting this Labour Party.
And is that down to Keir Starmer's leadership, the policies? If it was a different leader, if, for instance, your big mate Andy Burnham, who was very visible at the beginning of the week and indeed at the end of last week as a possible, alternative leader, saying, look, he's backtracked on it a bit, but MPs have been calling him up. People want him to stand. Certainly not denying that he was an alternative leader in waiting. He suddenly just sneaked off, disappeared. That leadership challenge seems to have fizzled out. If he was leader, would you go back to the Labour fold?
Well, I'd had to have the conversation with Andy to find out what his policies are.
Well, we know a lot of his policies, and they're further left than Keir Starmer's.
What I can say, Julia, is this. Look, I spent 7 years working very closely with Andy Burnham. And I know you're not a huge fan. I read your article in The Sun this weekend.
No, I like it. I like Andy Burnham as a man. I really do. And I think he's actually done good. I thought he played an absolute blinder for Manchester and indeed, the north of the country and countries that were being hit outside of London on COVID. I really thought he did a great job there. But no, I didn't rate his chances as being a better Prime Minister than Keir Starmer.
I think he would be. And he's a genuine person. And look, you've met far more MPs than I have.
Yeah, lucky me.
You've interviewed far more MPs. They're different people in front of the camera than they are behind the camera.
True. Yeah.
What I'd say about Andy Burnham is he's the same person. He really does care for people. And what he has done for Greater Manchester has transformed our city region. The supports he's given my sector, he's brought buses back under public control. He really cares and he's making a huge difference. And I'm not just saying this is not a north-south divide thing here, Julie, but Greater Manchester is having a real moment. You've only got to look at how many cranes, how many buildings being built at the moment. People are investing in this city region. And I look at other places, dare I say, London, and it's just not happening.
Oh no! Even like nighttime. I've got an 18-year-old daughter. I know about nightlife in London and Manchester and elsewhere, and there's no doubt at all. You know, Manchester is actually thriving on that front. And you just say people think of it. Oh well, who cares about a few nightclubs? No, this is about a whole nighttime economy, a whole daytime, a tourist economy, and he's a third largest employer in this country. Let's come back to what Keir Starmer can do differently, though. What do you make of him? I mean, you say it was an embarrassing speech, and you know, and you think he won't last past the May 6th local and Scottish and Welsh elections next year. But I mean, what do you make of his criticism specifically of Nigel Farage, calling him a snake oil merchant, saying he doesn't like or believe in Britain, saying that reform policies are racist, but then saying, no, but I'm not calling him a racist, and I'm not saying reform voters are racist. But do you think that's what reform voters or wavering Labour voters are likely to hear?
I just think he's played into their hand, to be honest, by saying that yesterday. I just think the anger that's probably created, you know, compared to where we were 18 months versus today, I know so many people who are about to vote reform. So many people. And what's really interesting, actually, is, do you remember that letter, Julia, that 120 business leaders wrote to say, yeah, we support Labour? I know quite a few of those people on that, and they've not come out publicly, but behind the scenes, they've withdrawn their support, and their support is now with reform.
That's
and
interesting.
It's very, very interesting to see what's happening at the moment. And I know you were sat with your colleague a second ago, but the Tories haven't even got a look in on this now. And I think
she's nodding,
Keir
by the way.
Knows. No, she's going. Keir Starmer knows he's in trouble here.
Yeah, absolutely. Can I ask you about a couple of the specific policies and things? And you mentioned like Rachel Reeves, she's got a budget in November. That's the big set piece that the next to get through. We were told that last year there were some difficult decisions, but now we're on the upswing. Well, we're not seeing growth. Inflation's still going up, unemployment going up. As you say, those 110,000 job losses in your industry, in your sector alone. We've also got the prospect of even more tax rises with that statutory insurance rise for employers and raising of the lowering of the threshold. I mean, that has absolutely killed off an awful lot of jobs in the industry. We're told that one of the issues we've got that we need to tackle is not just that issue of jobs, but also illegal immigration and people undercutting, people working illegally, arriving here illegally, working illegally, able to undercut workers. And we're told that for some reason, still can't work it out, digital ID cards are part of that solution. Would that make a difference to you? You're someone who's been an employer. Would that make a difference if people had a digital ID card?
Do you know, I'll be honest, I think that whole digital ID card was a dead cat thrown in just before conference. I think it was ill thought out. Let's be honest, before they threw that out there, everybody was talking about £740,000 undeclared donations. Mm-hmm. Everyone was talking about the head of comms for Number 10 resigning just before conference. Everybody was talking about Andy Burnham's leadership thing. Then you throw out this brick card and all hell breaks loose. And no one's talking about those things anymore. I'm absolutely not convinced. I think it's ill thought out. Why do I need a brick card when I've got a national insurance card, I've got a passport, I've got a driving licence, I've got bank accounts, utility bills? Yep. Doesn't make any sense. It will make no difference whatsoever.
And of course, when an employer who wants to employ people legally, it's very, very simple. When they want to find out if someone's legally able to work, they ask for their passport, they ask for their visa, they ask for their national insurance number. And if they're not doing that because they're not bothered, I doubt they're going to worry about a national ID card either.
They're not.
Can I ask you also
even the name's pathetic.
Well, there is that. Just finally, I want to ask you about the breaking news we had in the last hour and a half or so, and this is involving the PPE contract that the Tory peer Michelle Mone was involved in. She said she had nothing to do with it. It was actually a company set up by her husband, and she actually referred them via the VIP lane, which Tory MPs and Tory peers were able to use during COVID. So at a time when you were desperately trying to keep your business afloat, running nightclubs and big festivals, when you and your colleagues in the hospitality industry were were desperate. I mean, just desperately reaching into their bank accounts to sort of pay staff who put on furlough as pubs were closed, restaurants were closed, nightclubs were closed for many months at a time. A lot of people were making a hell of a lot of money, including this company, PPE MedPro, set up by Lady Mone's husband. They basically had a contract to supply £122 million worth of surgical gowns to the health department. Turns out they weren't actually ready or fit to be surgical gowns. They weren't sterile. They were totally unfit for purpose, had to be basically burnt. They've now been ordered by the High Court to pay back that money. What do you make of that story?
I agree with you. I think we need to be looking at prison term for people that did things like that. It was just... You're right. The industry was shut down. I remember she posted a picture of herself on a multi-million-pound yacht. It was sickening. And why she still has a seat in the Lords, it just doesn't make any sense to me at all.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, the fact that there were people who were worried more about making money themselves rather than, making sure their staff got paid and could pay their mortgages, or that people were able, kids able to go to school, still utterly befuddles me.
Yeah. Agreed.
Well, Sacha, fascinating to hear from you. I'm sure fascinating for both Andy Burnham and Keir Starmer to hear from you. Former very crucial Labour Party donor, Andy, and a great, basically nighttime economy advisor to Andy Burnham in Greater Manchester. That's Sacha Lord. Thank you for that.